It was the year 1897, late October, and the Artemis was making her slow return toward Portsmouth after weeks at sea. The night had come early, as it always did in those northern waters, and by 20 o'clock the world was nearly black. The sea stretched endless around them, calm yet heavy, reflecting the faint crescent of the moon. In a navigation cabin, 3 sailors kept watch. Their oil lamps flickered against the maps pinned to the walls. The compass needle trembled now and then, unsettled by the iron ribs of the ship. Their logs showed no traffic, no merchant vessels, no trawlers. Nothing was expected for another 100 miles. And then a sound. The telegraph receiver crackled to life. It should have been silent. No ship was scheduled in their quadrant. Yet a woman's voice slid through the static, faint but clear. "This is the Elysian. We are damaged. We need help. Please help." The 3 men froze. Behind her voice carried the strange echo of music, strings and piano, faint but distinct, and the distant laughter of a gathering. The youngest of the 3 leaned toward the machine. "She doesn't sound afraid," he whispered. "She sounds like she's hosting a party." The first mate keyed the transmitter. "Elysian, repeat your position. Latitude and longitude. What is your condition?" There was a pause, only static. And then, exactly the same words returned. "This is the Elysian. We are damaged. We need help. Please help." "Ask her again," the youngest urged. Maybe she didn't hear. The mate repeated the request. But the same response came, identical in tone, as if read from script. "This is the Elysian. We are damaged. We need help. Please help." The 3rd sailor rubbed his jaw. "There's no Elysian on the registry in this quadrant. Nothing within 50 miles. And yet she calls like she's right beside us." Another question was sent. Number of crew? Nature of damage? Do you have wounded? But nothing changed. The same message, cheerful, almost smiling, repeated again and again. Doubt thickened in the cabin. 1. There should not have been a ship in these waters at all. 2. No one in distress called with such a voice, bright, lilting, as though speaking from a ballroom rather than a ruined deck. And 3. The strange timing, the hour, the silence of the sea, and this sudden signal. The mate exhaled slowly. "I do not know," he murmured. "Maybe you will help." But his words were uncertain, and in the lantern's dim glow, all 3 men stared at the radio as though it were no longer a tool, but a mouth through which the night itself had spoken. Outside, the sea rolled on. The darkness deepened, and somewhere, out beyond their sight, a ship called Elysian seemed to wait. The radio fell silent at last, leaving only a hiss of static and the faint groan of the Artemis's timbers. The 3 sailors sat in uneasy silence, the weight of the woman's voice pressing against their thoughts. The sea outside whispered and shifted, a dark carpet stretching endlessly into the night. Finally, the first mate spoke. She gave no position, no coordinates. But if she called this strong, she cannot be far. The youngest frowned, studying the maps pinned to the navigation table. The flickering lamplight made the inked coastlines and dotted isles tremble as though alive. "Our set is old. Range may not be exact. The signal could drift." "No," the 3rd interrupted, voice low. That voice was close. Too close. If she were more than 20 miles, we'd have lost her tone. They all knew he was right, that in those years, the wireless was still new, temperamental, and fickle with distance. But voice clear enough to reveal laughter, music, the ring of glass on glass. That meant proximity. "Somewhere in the Black Sea near them, the Elysian drifted. The mate tapped the compass with a gloved finger. We set our course north-northeast. We sweep by grid. If she's there, we'll find her. If not, you let the thought fade. The decision was made. The Artemis's engine growled to life, pushing her prow into the dark. The wind pressed colder now, carrying brine and the promise of rain. For hours they searched in silence. The sky was a dome of dark velvet, pierced by only a handful of stars. Every so often, One of the sailors tuned the radio, only static. The woman's voice had ceased, as if she had spoken her part and stepped away forever. It was near midnight when the lookout called down. A shadow lay across the horizon. At first it seemed a cloud, but as they neared, the outline sharpened. Tall masts, sails in tatters. The Elysian. She drifted without lanterns, without crew. Her silhouette stood black against the faint silver glow of the moon. All hands, the mate ordered quietly. Prepare to board. They eased alongside. Ropes were thrown, hulls groaned together, and lanterns swung pale across the abandoned deck. Salt dusted the planks. Ropes lay untouched, sails stiff with spray. The mate climbed first, his boots thudding on the boards. The others followed, lanterns raised high. The deck stretched wide and hollow, barrels open, a card fluttering in the wind. But no men, no laughter, only the moan of wood. The youngest pressed his hand to the planks. Still warm, he whispered, as if they were just here. Search, the mate ordered. The galley showed bowls abandoned mid-meal, a kettle gone cold. In the crew quarters, beds lay unmade, a harmonica left on a pillow. And in the captain's cabin, a logbook lay open, ink blotched on the final line. We sail before breaking off. A few pages earlier spoke of voices at night, whispers without source, music beneath the waves, laughter where no man stood. The youngest closed the book quickly, his pulse loud in his ears. The mate looked from face to face. His voice was quiet but firm. Stay together. No man alone. We search once more, then we decide. Above them, the sails shifted without wind, and somewhere deep within the vessel, a sound like a chair creaked, as though someone had only just risen. They stood in the captain's cabin a long while, listening to the ship breathe, with stretching, ropes sighing, the tired hinge of a door somewhere far aft. The lantern's glass ticked softly as it warmed, then cooled, then warmed again. Below, the mate said at last, "Hold fast to the rails. No one wanders." They crossed the deck and found the main hatch. The iron rings were cold to the touch, slick with a film of salt that had no business being there. The night had been still. When the hatch lifted, a cooler air rolled up, cellar air, old wine, and oak, and something else. The faint perfume of wax and lilies. The youngest swallowed. A ballroom, he murmured, though no one had said the word aloud. They descended. The first steps were easy, the treads wide, shallow. Then the stairs narrowed, and the wood grew damp. Lantern light slid over the curve of beams like water over bone. Racks of barrels appeared in rows, names chalked on their sides in a careful hand. Madeira, port, claret. The glass of a fallen bottle glimmered on the planks like a frozen pool. From deeper in the hull, a soft, repeating sound reached them. 3 notes only, then a pause. 3 notes again, then a pause. Not music exactly, a mechanical patience. They found a door that had not been fully shut. Its latch had caught on a ribbon, black silk, the end frayed as if torn in haste. When the mate pressed the door, the ribbon slipped, and the panel swung inward to reveal a long, low room dressed in velvet and mirror glass. It was not a ballroom, but it had pretended well, a salon fitted for a crossing that expected company. Chairs in pairs, a settee beside a low table, a piano secured with leather straps against the ship's roll, its key cover closed. On the far side, a cabinet held crystal, some upright, some fallen, one flute with the ghost of a lipstick print at the rim, as if the last sip had been taken with a laugh. At the room's center stood a lacquered machine, a horn with a polished mouth like a flower, fixed to a box of gears and winding arms. Its needle described a tireless circle upon a wax cylinder. Every revolution produced those same 3 notes, the remnants of a recording worn thin by repetition until all that lived of the original was this stuttering phrase. The machine's crank turned very gently, nudged by a weighted pendulum that had been set to swing and never told to stop. "There's your party," the third sailor said, though he spoke softly, not unkindly. He reached and stalled the pendulum with 2 fingers. The room grew deeper for the silence that followed. "Not ghosts," the youngest whispered, and yet he did not sound relieved. They searched. In a sideboard drawer, they found menus printed on thick card. The last listed a toast to the passage in a careful hand. Beneath the cards, a stack of embossed envelopes addressed to names neat and delicate, none familiar. On the table lay a deck of playing cards spread in a fan, the 8 of clubs proud at the center. A chair sat askew, its back slightly warm beneath the mate's palm, though there was no fire nearby to account for it. "Logs first," the mate said, retracing to the captain's cabin with the youngest while the third remained to look over the salon, the piano, the polished horn. The cylinder's stillness felt wrong. Even inert, it seemed to hum with the memory of its own sound. Back in the captain's cabin, they took the ledger and the loose folios beside it. The last clear entry was neat, practical, wind and bearing, rations and morale. The next grew stranger. Lines quickened, sentence ends broke off, and margins filled with notations that were neither map nor measure. Night voices forward. Deck empty, yet steps heard. Passengers report laughter near the starboard rail. Find no one there. On the final page, the hand betrayed itself entirely. We sail, we sail, we essay, and the ink trailed to a blot like a small eclipse. Passengers, the youngest said, so not a crew alone. They carried the ledger to the salon, where the third sailor waited with a new find, a narrow door half hidden by the curve of the bulkhead. It opened onto a short corridor papered in a tiny blue stripe, a domestic comfort smuggled aboard a working ship. 4 doors on either side, each with a ceramic number. The first opened to a room with 2 beds, covers turned back, boots neatly paired beneath. No box, no trunks, no coats thrown upon a chair to mark a life paused and about to resume. Only rooms that had been used and then left, the imprint of a head faint in a pillow that had not yet forgotten. In the second cabin, a shawl lay folded at the foot of the bed. It sent the same lilies they had breathed at the hatch. Upon the small desk sat a diary no larger than a palm, tied shut with thread. The mate slipped the thread free. The script within was a woman's, looping even. October 19th. Fog in the morning, clear by noon. Captain assures us sea is kind this time of year. Music in the salon tonight. Someone plays softly even when we are in our rooms. A ridiculous comfort. I feel as though we travel not upon water, but upon a hallway between 2 houses where the doors are open and friends call to one another. The next page. October 20th. At dinner the glasses rang when the ship struck nothing. The gentleman beside me laughed and raised his flute again as if the ringing were part of a toast. I did not sleep. There's a murmuring sound under the boards at the edge of the bed, like a prayer heard through a church floor. And then, without date, we are asked to keep to our cabins at night. I do not mind. The dark hallway speaks. It says, "Not far now." The last line was peculiar only for its calm. They returned the diary to the desk and closed the door gently, as though the occupant had merely stepped out. In the corridor, the youngest paused and glanced back. He said nothing. He had learned the ship's lexicon, silence, restraint, the rituals for walking through absence. Engine room, the mate said, "If they are gone, let's learn how." They took the aft stairs down again, lower than the salon, and found the beating heart that should have been. The engine sat in its cradle, lever steady, dials unwavering. No hump, no fracture. No oil spilled in a hurry. No wrench left where a wrench had no right to lie. Power had been cut by a deliberate hand. The ship had been made to drift. The third sailor wiped his sleeve and left a clean arc on a gauge face. No panic, he said. No fight. A shutting down as neat as laying a coat across a chair. They stood a long time with that. If not storm, not fire, not failure, then what? What sends a crew and passengers away from muscle and hull and warm bed to? What? The waves? Boats, the youngest said suddenly. Let's see the boats. Back on deck, the night had shifted. Clouds had gathered without wind, drawn thin across the moon like curtain gauze. Their lanterns licked color out of the planks and gave it back as amber. They moved along the rail, counting. Hooks, ropes, davits in pairs like empty arms reaching. One boat remained, secured but with its cover thrown askew. The others, 3, were gone. They took them, the mates said. Not one, not two, all but this. Where to? The youngest asked. And there was a child's question in it, not for lack of courage, but for lack of any place to put the answer. He felt eyes on him. He realized the feeling was only the ship's long lines converging into shadow. Even so, he pulled his coat closer. In a leftover boat lay a coil of line and a tin of biscuits dented at the rim. Under the bench was a parcel wrapped in oilcloth. The mate tore the seam and found within a bundle of papers. Passenger lists, a manifest, a map marked with a small X to the east of their present position. A note in the captain's hand. If found, follow only by day. They all looked toward the horizon by instinct, though the note made it useless in the dark. The sea to the east was a single long thought. Black, and then more black, and then the idea of a far line where a pale day might someday gather itself. The youngest pressed his lips. How far by that mark? The third measured with his thumb on the map in the habit of a man who had done such things 1,000 times. 8 miles. 10, if the current toys with you. Dawn, the mate said. We do not chase shadows at night. They set a quiet camp on the Elysian's deck, as if one camps on land. Blankets, a kettle. One took the first watch, then another. The salon kept still below, its machines silent at last, though all 3 agreed they could feel a rhythm in the wood that had nothing to do with tide. The youngest did not sleep. He listened to the ship remember. When the edge of the world paled and the sea lifted its blue back to the first light, they lowered the remaining boat. The Artemis lay close by, her own crew awake now and watching in a hush that men reserve for funerals and new baptisms.